remind me again. The navigator is that thing that looks like a cross between Mother Brain and Pizza the Hut with a minge mouth.
Yes.
Okay.
Welcome to Tairimo Boys Podcast. I'm your host, Cody. With me in second chair is the boy who has to regularly milk a cat in order to survive. It's Jeremy.
It's a tough process.
Jeremy, you get through it. Drinking all that yummy cat milk.
I'm gonna be sick.
It's better than the poison. With me in third chair is the boy who controls the spice, thus, he controls the universe. It's Ryan.
Yo.
Just so you know, viewers at home, it's mostly parsley and rosemary. Today, we are going back to the original Dune movie since the new Dune Part 2 is coming out soon.
Not gonna lie, I didn't know this movie existed.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this movie exists.
Wonder why.
Dune's been tried before, but this movie, it was a catastrophic flop. The budget on it was anywhere between $40 and $42 million. It made between 31 and 38 million. That probably equivalent to anywhere between 100 and 150 million in nowadays money.
That's a big ouchie.
Yeah. The runtime of the movie, 2 hours, 16 minutes with credits. But we are going to get deep into that.
And you feel it. Believe that.
So, instead of doing first thoughts right away, Jeremy, what is your history with the Dune franchise?
Like I said just a little while ago, I had no idea this one existed. I'm aware of the newer ones. I heard they were pretty good. Went into this movie not knowing anything, and I don't feel like I accomplished anything after watching this movie. I still don't know anything. Except spice controls the universe. I do know that.
That's the important thing.
There we go. All right.
What about you, Ryan?
I first became acquainted with Dune way back in 2021. I didn't care about Dune at all. I was never interested in it. Then one of my coworkers slash friends, asked me to go see it with them. So we went as a group, and I loved it. The Denis Villeneuve movie. I loved it, and then I watched this movie.
No more love? No more love, Ryan?
Oh, we'll get into that. No spoilers about how I felt about this movie.
You have to watch the rest of the review to get spoilers.
Yep.
But I'll tell a little bit more of a story next week when we get to Dune Part 1. But for everyone at home, this is a warning. This movie, I'm assuming it covers like the entire events of the first book. So there will likely be spoilers for Dune Part 2 in this review, even though the movie's not out yet. We haven't watched it.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so many ways you can do Dune if you stick to the source material. As for me, I've always heard that Dune was kind of like a fusion between Star Wars and Game of Thrones in space. I thought about getting into it when I was in high school, but never did. Before the Dune Part 1 movie came out a few years ago, I tried reading the first book. If you're unaware, who's the author of the book? It's Frank Herbert, is it?
Yeah, Frank Herbert.
Yes, sir.
Well, Frank Herbert's a really smart guy, and the reading level on that is extremely advanced. Like, I'd read a chapter of that thing, and I'd just feel exhausted. I got a few chapters into it, probably around the time that they arrived on Dune. I was like, fuck this, I'll wait for the movie here, whenever that comes out. And I watched it, and we'll talk about that in our next review.
Stay tuned for more spicy reviews.
Spice being the key thing.
Yeah.
So, with that out of the way, Jeremy, what are your first thoughts on this movie?
Again, didn't know what the hell was going on, and other than knowing that spice controls the universe, that's about it. That was my first thoughts. I was like, what did I get myself into?
What about you, Ryan?
I ain't gonna lie. I freaking loved this movie, man. But not for the same reasons I love the 2021 movie. It's like watching part of the 2021 movie, and then you have like random fever dreams peppered throughout it.
That is literally my feeling on this. Like, Jeremy, maybe if you would have seen like part 1, and if we would have waited till like part 2 came out, like this stuff would all make sense. But the first 90 minutes of this movie, it's literally the part 1 movie.
Lord. So, like, the politics and things like that, they eventually make sense when, I mean, you guys have seen part one. Like I felt like I was bombarded in this movie in the very beginning with all this information. Here's your politics, here's your worlds, and it was a slog to get through it to understand.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but the new movies, they well, at least the new movie because there's only one of them out right now. It takes its time explaining some stuff to you that explains like, oh, here's these two royal houses. There's the emperor house, but it leaves a lot of like unnecessary information out. Like navigators aren't even in part one. But this movie, after it gives you a huge info dump at the beginning, then you go to like the Emperor's throne room and they wheel out this huge like mutant slug thing, which
But
seems to be in charge.
I still don't understand the mutant slug thing.
And you're not gonna understand the mutant slug thing, not even next week. Okay, so
Wonderful.
this is probably something for Ryan because unless Ryan's done some research, he's not gonna know what the navigators are. I'm not 100% sure on this, so from what I've read, so David Lynch made this movie, and we're gonna get a lot more into that. The navigators, what they do is space is a dangerous place. So navigators in like the novels, they're described as like fish people. They were formerly humans, but essentially they overdosed on spice and they mutated. So now they're like put in tanks where they just swim around in like a gas version of spice. I don't know if like there's a special process to get someone to turn to a navigator or if it's just long-term exposure to spice that does it. Something that this movie didn't explain is how important spice is. So it did go a little bit into the fact that you need spice to space travel. Of course, space is a dangerous place, so the navigators they've got like extreme like psychic abilities and they got some future vision. So when it comes to navigating a spaceship, if you navigate in a straight line, there's a pretty good chance you'll run to a sun or hit an asteroid. But the navigators can see in the future and plan a route around those. So they're needed in order to get around. Spice, first off, is needed to get around the galaxy. Something that wasn't mentioned in this movie is the fact that spice it heightens your senses and I think it gives you some little bit of psychic abilities when you're using it, but it does extend your life if you're using it. So that's why this whole society is revolved around spice and controlling it and controlling the universe. But you really don't need to know much about the navigators.
Went over my head.
Yeah, I had no idea.
So the spice is essentially crack in mushrooms that also extends your life.
I don't know if it was crack, but it's maybe magic mushrooms that extend your life. Let you travel through space more than the usual space that you travel through if you take mushrooms. But
That's what I got from it.
I know enough about the Dune franchise where spice is kind of like a situation of you don't want to know how the sausage is made.
I mean, that was kind of alluded to in the movie. I'm gonna go ahead and say it's worm shit.
It is.
Okay, there we
You
go.
won. You won. It's worm shit.
And they alluded to it like the entire second half, all being like, "What does it have to do with the worms? The worms." Like, that's definitely worm shit.
All right, I don't think I got to my first thoughts, and we're like 10 minutes in, I think. So I'd say this movie's divided up into like two parts. So you got the first 90 minutes of it, which is like part one of the Dune movie. And like, when I was watching the first 90 minutes, I was like, don't people talk about this? Like, why isn't this a classical movie? And then you get to the next 45 minutes, it's like, oh, that's why. So, Jeremy, what were your thoughts on the second part of this movie?
I'm dividing it up by hours one and two, so basically what you did. Part two of it is when it kept my interest a little bit more. It had a ton of problems in it, and there were things that were driving me nuts. But the first half, the first hour, like nothing happened for the first 40 minutes. I was like, oh my God, I'm 40 minutes in and literally nothing's happened, and I still don't know what's going on.
It takes them 20 minutes to do like the box thing, and then 40
Oh, don't
minutes.
even get started there.
the four the 40 minutes is like when they finally reach Dune for the first time. But what's your problems with the box, Jeremy?
Oh my God, he turned into. I guess is this their version of lightsabers? They turned into Steve from Minecraft, and they just like throw themselves at each other, and then their weakness is like pointy objects.
Jeremy, I think we're talking
I
about
would just
two
throw it
entirely
out there.
different things.
Oh, I was talking about the duel, the sparring scene. You're talking about the old lady box scene, aren't you?
Yes. Okay. So it'll be explained better in the Dune Part 1. They do like the shielding really bad in this movie. It's like CGI. And so, futuristic movie takes place 8,000 years in the future, the year 10,000 and something. Mankind's created shields around their body. The thing about the shields is
Was
they
that when it looked like was that when it looked like Minecraft meets Tron?
I think that's a good
Exactly.
way to describe it. I don't know why they did that. Why did they just put they blue glowed everyone's eyes? Like why did they just green glow everyone when they were using their shields? They put this like awful these blocky things like over like Patrick Stewart and like Paul's character. And
You
it
can't see what's going
you,
on during the fight. It's like
you,
a Michael Bay movie, but no awesome explosions. You just don't know what's happening.
it was just a poor choice in the movie. But to explain that to Jeremy, so future, they've got shields around their body. The shields, they deflect bullets.
Just not pointy objects.
Hold on, I'm getting to that. If I take a rock and throw it at you, the shield's gonna deflect it. The thing is it allows like things moving slowly to go through it. So whenever Patrick Stewart and Paul are like dueling, whenever they're like slowly moving the daggers in the shield, that's why it's piercing the shield.
Wait, that brings a problem to the second time we see the shield.
I knew you were gonna bring this up. He doesn't die like that in the next movie.
Okay, we're just gonna write that off as a goof.
It's kind of I'm gonna explain that as like it was kind of like a drill gun. So it kind of shoots a thing and then it slowly drills into it. So there you go.
All right, okay.
At least I don't think the drill gun is in the next movie. But here's the thing: it's the future, so you expect there to be lasers. Well, I know at least the next Dune movie it explains that like if a laser hits these things, it blows up, so people don't use lasers until the end of the movie when they're shooting lasers at each other. But the reason for all this is they wanted like all the combat to be like martial arts and hand to hand combat and stuff. So instead of just like soldiers with laser rifles and everything, it gives you something more to imagine when you're reading the books. But anyways, the box scenes we were talking about before, Jeremy derailed the whole thing. Like if I remember right, they give a little bit of explanation at the beginning of the next movie, and then they immediately go into the box scene. So there's not like a whole lot of screwing around. But it just completely surprises me, Jeremy, that you prefer the second half of the movie. Ryan, what about you? What do you think?
So, Fade Routho with his blue banana hammock. That's part two. Sting from
Sting,
the
yeah.
police. Yeah, I love. I'm pretty sure. I love that the writers of this movie were probably like, "Don't give him a lot of lines."
I don't know if it was that or if it was just like the studio meddling. So for anyone who doesn't know,
Yeah.
David Lynch directed this movie, and he likes to pretend it doesn't exist because the original final cut of this movie was 4 hours long.
Lord.
What ended up happening, the studio got involved. It was like needs to be cut down to 2 hours. So you think the reasonable thing to do would be, hey, I'm gonna cut this into two movies, and then we can release two movies, and everyone's happy. But nope, they cut down the two movies into one. The second half of it is it's just a mess. Like I said, when you get the first 90 minutes of it, it covers part one of the Dune movie. And it hits all the beats that are normally in Dune. I'm not even kidding you. As soon as it hits an hour 30, it feels like everything's just going at hyper speed. It's like almost like it's a montage where you're doing the normal stuff, and suddenly there's worm riding and cat milking and civil war going on in the fastest love story in the universe.
Oh, don't even get me started on that shit.
You could tell whenever they were editing this movie, they completely just butchered like part two of this. Like everything they cut was in the second part. So you got all these characters appearing out of nowhere and all that.
A lot of time lapses.
Speaking of Sting, here's a little fun fact. Patrick Stewart. Hold on, David Lynch didn't know Patrick Stewart was going to be in the movie. Whenever he saw that someone named Patrick Stewart had been hired for the role, he didn't know it was the Patrick Stewart. Whenever Patrick Stewart got on the set, he didn't know who the hell Sting was. Now, I've got a question for Ryan. Well, maybe it's also for Jeremy. Is it just me, or did you get like Batman music vibes throughout the movie?
A hint of it.
Yeah,
I know like the band Toto did the music for this movie. Did they also do like the original Batman movie?
that was Prince.
That's weird. Do you think Prince might have stolen like Toto's thing?
Be hilarious if he did.
Now, I do want to talk about something. What you boys think about like the architecture in this movie?
Well, I loved it.
Meh, didn't have a problem with it.
Like, I absolutely loved it in this movie because you could see like each house has their own like architectural styles, and they also have like their own types of uniforms. Yeah, here's a little fun fact. Whenever you had the Navigator Guild at the beginning, their suits were made out of body bags. Cast didn't even know that until after they got done filming because they didn't want anyone freaking out. But my problems when it ever comes to like the Dune Part One is like it just feels so bland. But in this movie, it's like it's all colorful and just the fact that everyone has their own architectural style. I absolutely love it. Hey Ryan, what's David Lynch like really known for? I know he does Twin Peaks. What else has he done? Do you
Yeah,
know?
Twin Peaks. Did he do Mulholland Drive?
Jeremy, do you know the answer to that?
I do not.
Yes, he did.
Okay. So I know he's like a famous director, but like I just
Yeah.
can't place anything. But
I've heard the name.
I
where
don't think
did?
I've seen any of his stuff.
Yeah, I think he's really artsy. I mean, that's why the sets look like they do and all that.
Oh, we
Tell,
did Blue Velvet,
I've never seen that
which
either.
Paul Atreides and Dennis Hopper were in.
We're just not cultured enough.
Nope.
All right, so Jeremy, I need to ask you the question: what the does walk without rhythm mean?
I don't know.
What about you, Ryan?
Walk without rhythm.
Yes.
I don't know, but have you ever heard of Monty Python's The Minister of Silly Walks?
I haven't, but it sounds like I should have.
It's where like John Cleese and I think like John Cleese is like just walking in the most absurd fashion, like taking long steps and stuff. I really wish that when they did that, they would have just cut to a clip of John Cleese like taking large steps across the desert.
I've often thought of myself like, what the hell does that mean? Like, would I even survive these damn sandworms? Like, do you just go like one, two, three, and then stop, and then one, two, three, four, and then maybe one, two? It doesn't make the rules in this are like complicated. It's like whenever they're putting on like their water breathing suits or like recycling suits. It's like, oh, you need to breathe in your mouth and breathe out on your nose. You can survive a week on that. Like, just imagine having to do that for like a freaking week.
Yeah, I thought long and hard about that. No, thank you. Although it would make more sense to me to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth.
The
I mean,
only
they
thing
are in the desert.
Well, the only thing I could think of is, like, I mean, your mouth's gonna be closed, but your nose is gonna be open, so you're always gonna be losing water from your nose. But then again, your face probably shouldn't be exposed because you'd be sweating most of the water out through your face, and that's gonna be another problem in the next movie. Like, you'd think these would have been full freaking suits, but no, whatever. I'm not gonna lore pick like an old franchise like Dune.
You know, something that absolutely drove me nuts during this movie. It's probably my biggest pet peeve is the whispering in their heads.
That's monologuing, Jeremy.
Yeah,
They
the awful monologuing.
the only reason that exists is because they cut the movie down from 4 hours. There were supposed to be scenes explaining all this, but they had to explain it like really quick. So somewhere there's a 4 hour long version where they're not monologuing. I mean, it was a unique way to explain stuff, but I guess some people like Jeremy don't like it.
No, no, not that much. I don't know, Ryan. Did you have a problem with all the monologuing?
I
Maybe it's
actually
just me.
kind of dug it.
Maybe it is just me. I'm the odd boy out. It's just the whisper voices were getting to me.
I mean, I've often thought about it's like if you transfer a book from a movie, like how do you properly do that without you'd have to it requires like a lot of exposition. It's like at the beginning of the movie, it's like, oh, my old friend Thomas, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in 6 years. And the book is like, this is, oh, hey Thomas, how you doing? And then he's thinking in his head, I haven't seen him in 6 years. So I mean, it's certainly a way of doing it. Like I mean, I enjoyed it. Jeremy's a
Fair
pain
enough.
in the butt.
That's what I
Like
live
that
for.
scene in Family Guy where Peter narrates his own life.
But you have to narrate the Lord, Ryan, or it doesn't make sense, even though it doesn't make any sense to Jeremy.
Yeah. I dug it. I was a fan of it.
I'd do boys in action, but I think we'd all freaking die when Patrick Stewart fights us. Or
Of
we
course we
pull,
would.
or we pull our freaking hands out of the box. So.
There's our voice in action. For as much as I'm shitting on the movie, there was some enjoyable stuff in there too.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a space epic. There's a lot of books to it, and it's got its own lore. It's just Jeremy just didn't understand it this time. So hopefully next week he understands it.
But you gotta admit that first buildup, they throw so much at you, and it's just so slow. It's hard to catch on to it. I just couldn't get. I felt like there was a pretty big missed opportunity with like some of the scenes that happen. You're supposed to feel emotionally attached to some of these characters, and I was just like, I have no idea who's who still. I know Paul. I know Patrick Stewart.
Yeah,
I know the Baron. That was it.
they do a better job of that. Like the doctor that betrayed him, they explain that a lot more in the next movie, and the Duncan Idaho character, where he was the one that got killed by the drill gun.
Oh,
Like I'm guessing they cut a lot out of this movie with him because like he plays like a way larger role in the part one. As soon as he dies, like who was this guy again? If you don't remember the first movie,
so
yeah.
I was like, who is this guy again? Oh, he showed up in one scene.
Yeah, they make it a lot more emotional. I think he does die to the drill gun in the next Dune movie. Now that I think about it, we'll address that next week if he does die to the drill gun. Ryan, do you remember if he dies to the drill gun?
Who, Duncan Idaho?
Yes.
I thought he just. I didn't think so.
To be continued.
Now I got to know if he dies to the drill gun. Well, whatever. Next week we'll readdress this. I'll get my pen and write that down. Drill gun.
I don't know. I felt like
Maybe, I don't know.
maybe there's just too much. Like you said, Cody, they should have just put it into two movies. So they should have broke it down into two movies. I felt like there's probably so much cut out that I should have really been more emotionally invested in some of these characters. Like it was a great cast, and I have no
Yeah.
problem with the acting whatsoever. Like I thought it was on point. The scenes were great. I was just like, who the fuck is this? Like, like what's going on?
Yeah, you're 100% spot on. Like the cast of this movie is absolutely amazing. Like I don't think anyone really did bad for what they were giving. I mean,
No, no,
you
not at
can
all.
criticize like Baron Harkonnen just being like completely nuts. I mean, he's not this like nuts in the next movie, by the way, Jeremy.
Okay.
I mean,
He was getting a little struggle snuggly at some point. So I was like, what's going on here?
well, if it makes you feel any better, here's your little fun fact, Jeremy. So the reason like he's all covered in like pussy boils in this movie is because he got kind of well, he didn't kind of he did get struggle snuggly with I think Jessica's mom.
And she gave him the boils?
Yeah, oh yeah, they plagued him with like some disease. Like they're
Oh.
witches. They're like space witches. I mean,
Oh, more space witches.
yeah, I mean that's the thing about this movie. It's got fantasy elements, like I mentioned with the shields. They're wanting like hand to hand combat, and you've got space witches and all that.
And you also have a Wormborn. Like, for those who've played Elder Scrolls and know who Skyrim is, you can't tell me, like, if you're going through this movie, like, that guy, he's doing the worm shout. Like, he's Wormborn as a
Did,
play on Dragonborn from Skyrim.
Ryan, were those sound weapons in the first movie?
Sound weapons?
Yeah, you know how they were talking and shooting the sounds.
Oh, yeah. I don't really understand all that, or I didn't understand all that.
But
Um,
I think it's more
when
of
he's
a
like, you mean like when Lady Jessica's like training him to use the voice?
well, no, that's like Jedi mind trick. But you know when he's got that like hand like knuckle thing and he's shouting and then it, like destroys the impenetrable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
That's
I
how they
got no
described it,
fucking
right?
idea.
That's how they described it. Certain frequencies, basically, your sound becomes a weapon.
I must have faded off by
I,
that part.
I was trying to make sense of
it's a
all of it. I'm
fever.
like, what do these weapons do?
The second half's like a fever dream. I don't even know if that stuff's in the actual like novel. Like I think it's like more martial arts, but they kind of switched over this sound thing look more flashy in this. But we'll find it out in the next 2 weeks. And it's not laser, so it's not gonna cause a huge explosion. So
Cody, you can't tell me you weren't thinking it, though. Skyrim,
I
Dragon Shout,
was.
hearing the voice, especially. I don't want to spoil it, but at the end, when, somebody does a worm shout.
Wait, Jeremy, you hit this like on nail on the head, like fever dream. Just the last 45 minutes comes at you like a freight train. You get Sting in a freaking speedo, and then suddenly cat milking that goes nowhere, and then full civil war and training, and
From the little bit that they explained was the time lapse. There was years of guerrilla warfare,
it
which
was
I
two
thought was
years.
I love. Okay, well, 2 years of guerrilla warfare, which I get behind. I was like, okay, that's cool. Then that romance comes out of nowhere. I'm like, where the hell did this? Oh, I've loved you since the beginning. Wait, what beginning? You guys just met. It really comes at you like a freight train. But I just kind of like brush it off as like, okay, there was a time lapse. They didn't explain a whole lot, but we'll just brush it off as that. As somebody who's not familiar with the lore whatsoever, I feel like I needed to be somewhat equipped walking into this movie, to be honest.
I just think too much got cut for it to really make sense unless you're paying attention. If I remember right, part one's like 2.5 hours long, so it'll have more. It has more time to slow things down, and like I said, it cuts out like a bunch of unnecessary stuff, like the navigators, which aren't really important at this point. I don't even think the emperor's in the first part.
Who it like? Did we see the Emperor in the
Oh,
OG?
yeah, that was like the guy at the very beginning. He was talking with the navigator, and then he was the main guy, like in the like the throne room.
Oh, okay. He was the Emperor.
Yeah,
Okay, I got you.
I thought it was like Christopher Lee, but apparently it was a different actor.
Remind me again. The navigator is that thing that looks like a cross between Mother Brain and Pizza the Hut with a minge mouth.
Yes,
Okay.
and
I
like I
didn't
said,
know. I thought that was the Emperor for a second. I was like, what is happening?
That's what I thought too. I'm like, okay, is this space slug that makes
I was
plants
like,
out of its
that
ass
doesn't look like.
thing? Like, is this the Emperor?
Yeah.
I mean, I could see why. There's like some like there's some like politicking going on where it gives you the idea that yeah, like the navigators are actually the ones in charge, which is like really good about this series. Like there's an emperor, but it seems like the mutated slugs are fucking commanding the emperor around because the thing literally fucking openly threatens him. All right, Jeremy, got any other questions?
Nothing that comes to mind at the moment.
Ryan, you've seen part one, so do you have any questions?
No.
All right, Jeremy, passing the topic on to you.
Boy, there was one scene that got me when Paul, I'm gonna say Paul and friends, first land on Dune or whatever the hell the planet's called, and they meet the Fremen for the first time. Is like he's like, you've worn a still suit before, and Paul's like, no. He's like, your suit is fitted with desert fashion,
You're
as
gonna
if they didn't already know. Like, hey, I'm going to a desert planet. Yeah, I'm gonna cover up or I'm gonna be prepared. And then like they do this little the plot thing is like he would know how we do it or whatever.
I really think the costume design didn't show it good enough, but there's a specific way you put the suit on, and everyone was making mistakes. I think you'll like it more in the next Dune part.
Okay, so that's gonna be okay. Yeah, they'll come full circle for me then. Because I was like looking at like Patrick Stewart's suit, for instance. They all look the same to me.
I
And
have a
Mr.
winter
Freeman's
coat
like,
like that.
yeah,
Oh yeah, here's another little fun fact. Patrick Stewart said that that was the most uncomfortable suit that he ever wore, but damn, did it look good.
there were some nice looking suits. Speaking of Patrick Stewart, his cul-de-sac mullet,
I
all
noticed
business,
that.
all business, no party. He's a serious guy in this movie.
Yeah, so he's got the typical Captain Picard look at the beginning of the movie, and then after the 2 year time skip, he's it's like a freaking bald mullet.
Cul-de-sac mullet.
He didn't bother cutting his hair once. Did we mention that the cast of this movie was amazing?
For real, the cast was, and the acting was on point. I had zero problems with that.
Yeah, it just came down to studio middling. All right, Jeremy, anything else?
Nope, that's all I got.
All right, Ryan, passing the topic on to you.
The scene where the doctor replaces Leto Atreides' tooth. He kept going, the tooth, the tooth, the tooth. Did anybody else besides me blurt out, is out there?
No, but that's
Damn.
hilarious. In reality, the tooth was more like in there, specifically in his mouth. And Jeremy, that scene's a lot better in the next movie.
Okay, so they kill off Paul's dad again.
I mean, that's this. As far as I
He's like
know,
the Thomas Wayne of Dune.
Well said, sir.
except this isn't happening behind a movie theater. But as far as I know, this movie is like accurate to the book.
even with their shouty guns.
I don't know about the shouty guns, but
What they call them? Was that the weirding modules that
yeah,
they call?
weird, like warding. Yeah, but we'll see if that shit's in the next movie.
We'll see if everybody becomes wormborn.
I haven't watched it since COVID, so. All right, Ryan, anything else?
That's it.
All right, Jeremy, final thoughts?
I enjoyed this movie more than I let on in this review. I just wanted to tear into it. I just feel like it was a missed opportunity, to be honest. I guess they just cut way too much out of it for me to follow along. Otherwise, it could have been an enjoyable movie. We've said it a million times. But the cast and the acting was spot on.
Ryan, final thoughts?
I thought I would hate this movie with a passion, and surprisingly, I loved it. I do, however, wish they would have fleshed out the love story between Baron Harkonnen and Dr. Pimple Popper MD from the Learning Channel. Other than that, I loved it.
Oh, wait. I got one more thing. Is the life water, is that ever explained? Is that explained better in part one?
I don't remember anything about the life water.
I had zero idea what was going on with that,
That
other than at some point one of the Fremen said your water will mingle with our water. And I was like, is that a sex joke? What does that
no,
mean?
you're confused. So you'll see it in the next movie. Like waters, so they live in the desert, so water's like extremely important. So there'll be like a spitting scene that's really important in the next movie. But like that's kind of like a great. That's kind of like a nice thing to say since they live in the desert.
Okay, I
But
got you.
I don't remember anything about the life water.
You say
What?
spitting scene?
Yeah, remember like when the like Freeman first introduced, the guy spits on the table,
Oh yeah,
and then
just a little spittle.
yeah, the Duke's like immediately offended, and like I think it's like Duncan or that desert doctor guy is like, whoa, 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 that's like a high honor among them.
That's all I
Um,
got.
for my final thoughts, I'm in the same boat as Ryan. I thought I was gonna come into this thinking it was a bad movie. That it was a really good movie the first 90 minutes, and then it turned into like hyper speed fever dream the last 45. Kind of wish that it wouldn't have had so much studio interference, and David Lynch was smart to always make sure he had final say in the movie after how this turned out. But we've got a part one Dune remake, and we're gonna have another one here next week, and then we'll have that review out probably the following week. So we should finally get the epic space opera that we've always wanted. At least the first book, anyway.
Spicy space opera.
Very spicy. All right, Jeremy, it is time to scale this. Now,
Oh boy.
with this being the space opera that it is, and trying to be as epic as it is, today our scale is going to go from the original Star Wars trilogy to the second, third, and then wherever that fourth Matrix movie was. Where would you rank this?
So we're talking about the original Star Wars trilogy, all three, to the fourth Matrix movie.
Yeah, we're talking about the original three Star Wars movie, episode 4, 5, and 6, and then we're talking about like how the epic first Matrix movie went to the other three flops.
I'm gonna put it a notch closer to the Matrix movie.
What about you, Ryan?
Same.
I'm gonna have to go against you boys. I'm gonna put it kind of in the middle because it tried, and if the studio hadn't interfered, it probably would have been closer to the top. But it's not like the fourth one where the fourth Matrix movie where suddenly Trinity's the one.
To be fair, I didn't see that one, so for reasons.
You aren't missing much. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Tairimo Boys podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell them such you love to spice up your life. And don't forget to ring that motherfucking bell. Stay tuned for more episodes and stay tuned for more Dune.